Oh.
上杉さん、
Oh, Yotsuba.
あなたが好き
I
です。
love you
ず
too.
っと
I love you too. Oh, oh,
好き
oh.
でした。
Hi there. Looks like I'm doing another review again, which means one of two things. I've either finally managed to get a work ethic, or I'm currently halfway through a depressive spiral and I needed to play another shitty 3D point-and-click game. And while you try to figure that out for me, let's talk about Art of Murder FBI Confidential. If you're one of the 400 people who saw my first review, you'll remember that I loved the second game and the third game, but tried the first game and found it so atrocious that I dropped it almost immediately. I figured I should right this wrong and give Nicole Bonnet's first outing another chance, and frankly, I was pleasantly surprised. And if you aren't one of those 400 people, then I should now clarify when I say pleasantly surprised, the game was still complete ass. But when you are 3 breakdowns into a 5 breakdown month, it's nice to play something that makes you laugh. Anyway, enough veiled jokes about my deteriorating mental health. We have a City Interactive game to look at. So please join me in trying to figure out why I just can't quit Nicole Bonnet no matter how hard I try. Although let's be honest, it's most likely her legs. As with every one of these games, the story completely slips your mind 5 nanoseconds after the credits roll, and right after I played it, I bought a new house and had to move everything. So if you think you don't remember it directly after playing it, imagine spending a week doing nothing but boxing up crates of memories left under your bed, and also Hatsune Miku figurines. So, of course, unfortunately, I had to play the entire game twice within the same month, which I typically try to avoid, as these kind of games definitely adhere to the absence makes the heart grow fonder saying. And without spoiling anything too early, I will say this game seems smarter than the second one does. Not in the sense that dialogue is good or makes sense, or that it's well written. The mystery is one that you could actually solve just by playing it if you pay extra special close attention, and I only really figured it out near the end. It isn't a random, and then this guy was the murderer, like 2 and 3 are. If you pay close enough attention, you may actually be able to figure it out by the end of this summary. So, without further ado, let's talk about Nicole Bonnet's origin. Was she a dark Avenger-like figure in Art of Murder 1? A lovable goofball who gets results? Or a barely coherent Fed who says the kind of things I say when I've had enough Dramamine to put an elephant to bed? Nicole Bonnet, a new FBI agent, shows up at a stakeout and finds a man who I cannot for the life of me remember the name of. He is very sexist and rude, and tells Nicole to piss off and grab him some coffee. Nicole does so, and when she returns back with the Starbucks, she hears gunshots and runs back up to him, only to find him bleeding out. And he tells us to take the message to Nick before finally kicking the bucket. She then sees a man run out of the building and into a red car, which speeds away. The game then hard cuts to the main menu, and we hit New Game, only to find Nicole's gangly giraffe body hanging around her boss's office. Her boss is named Chaser, after his problematic sexual history, and he's also a massive asshole. He tells Nicole how some people just die on the job, not a big deal really, and he expects a report from Nicole on the entire affair. He also informs her that she is now partnered with Nick. Now, if you watched my video or played the sequel to this game, you may remember Nick saving you inexplicably in Spain, when he fucking genie pops into existence to help you escape some dogs. I was excited to see Nick in this game, to maybe see what made him so special, or maybe see what operation he and Nicole had so they can share thoughts over long distances. Well, stay tuned, because I'm sure we'll find out more about him soon. Chaser tries to call Nick, who never ever answers his phone, and it goes to voicemail. This is already relatable to me, since anytime someone calls me at work, that shit goes straight to voicemail. Nicole, just like my coworkers funnily enough, gets very mad about this and finally finds his new phone number, as his old one is apparently at the bottom of a river, calls him, gets ignored, and then gets sent a text. Nicole gets this new phone number from Ruth. It really is a reunion from Art of Murder 2. Ruth is the character Nicole randomly calls every so often, who spouts extremely confusing lines that I assumed were a reference to this game, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
How's my cat?
Perfectly fine, which can't be said about my refrigerator.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
She's also a real potty mouth in this game, which I'm not a huge fan of. Chaser informs Nicole that there's a series of murders occurring, where the victims are tortured, cut open by a ritual dagger while alive, get their hearts torn out, and then have ancient coins shoved in their body, which compared to Art of Murder 2 and 3 is strangely dark. The dagger is a distinct looking blade that they gave us a police sketch of, so Nicole decides to go to a local museum for some advice. The museum is staffed by a director named Warren, who I mistakenly called Branford for half of my notes because this story is clearly such a roller coaster, and a security guard who I swear to God sounds enough like Kent Knutson from Normality to make me think there's something there.
Director Warren?
Yeah, he in there? Where can I find him?
Straight ahead. He's messing around in the main hall, you know.
It's very relaxing watching this all day. Ooh, yeah, wow.
Director Warren has a collection of knives to show Nicole to see if anything stands out. Nothing does, but then Nicole blackmails the Kent Knutson sounding guy with the fact that we know the FBI is looking for him on drug charges, and he lets us into the basement. We have a certified Hood Classic City Interactive Waste Your Time puzzle and discover a knife that is one-to-one our sketch in the storage area. It's part of a set and one of them is missing. Nicole notes this and goes back to her car. On the way to her car, though, Nick texts her that body has shown up in Staten Island and he's a stockbroker. He was gutted and his heart was pulled out just like the last victim. She drives over there right away, and despite the cops going over the place, Nicole finds a business card literally giving a name and phone number to a man named Alan Branford, quote-unquote collector. Nicole further tampers with the crime scene by moving a pool ball around and finding out that the murderer stuffed a golden idol's head into the pool table ball return. Why would he do that? No idea, and I assure you it won't be answered by the end of the game. She picks this up with no gloves, evidence bags, or forensics taking a look at it first, even though I specifically tried to grab those items very early on in the game. When Nicole gets back to the office, she dumps the evidence in the storage room and goes back to her desk. Nick has left her a note folded into origami which, while it has a cute sort of Valentine's Day and third grade feeling to it, probably should have just been a text, in case she missed it. He tells her to meet him at a random building at 4:30 with no further explanation. She also goes to talk to Chaser, who tells her that Warren is essentially the prime suspect right now, since 2 separate items have been linked to his museum, and most cops have shot people for evidence less conclusive than that. Nicole calls Branford using the phone number from his business card found at the murder site, and he doesn't answer. I'm not sure why she doesn't have this submitted to evidence. She then calls Warren, who apparently is speaking into his cell through a fucking megaphone.
Is this Mr. William Warren?
It is. Hello again, Agent Bonnet. How can I help you today?
And he tells Nicole that not only can she come by right now to look around, but also Alan Branford is here too, because they're good friends. Nicole heads over and speaks to Warren about the fact that there's a literal copy of the murder weapon in his museum. All the murderers have had museum-like artifacts. That one murder site had Warren has a large cock spray painted on the wall, and his best friend's business card was found at the most recent murder. Warren mentions the other knife was shipped off this morning, but besides that tidbit, Warren seems to only focus on the fact that we do not have a warrant, more like a warrant, am I right? Is the thing on? And threatens Nicole with a call from his attorney. Nicole immediately calls him a pussy and says that she thinks he's the murderer, so probably not a good idea to call his lawyer. Now, if you know anything about the police, this is actually an exceptionally good reason to call your lawyer, because they're probably going to roll you around very soon. But Warren is sufficiently scared off and doesn't call his legal counsel. He says that he actually has an alibi that can be corroborated by Branford, who again, can't stress enough, had his business card at the murder site. So not exactly a trustworthy person for an alibi, but he does confirm Warren's alibi. He also confirms something else, that in this universe, women with chisel chins are universally considered to be extremely beautiful. Yeah, I didn't bring this up earlier, but Warren says something along these lines as well, and other people say it later on too. For some reason, Nicole's allure is irresistible. Nicole mentions all the murders going on recently, and he just says, "Ha quiero," without explaining it at all. Probably nothing. Plus, Nicole's ADHD-addled mind has realized the golden statue missing a head in the other room is probably related to the golden head we found. There's that FBI training at work. Nicole asks Warren if we can take a look at it, but he says we need a warrant this time. She goes to the FBI office. For some reason, Ruth, the receptionist, gets a warrant for us, and then she returns. After solving a very stupid and boring puzzle, we get the body of the statue, and then go to the apartment that Nick mentioned to us. This apartment is the one that James died in, who was the person at the beginning of the game whose name I couldn't remember. In the apartment, Nicole finds a homeless man named Joel Tatum, who she nearly guns down, who tells her that Nick gave him a message to pass on to Nicole. After solving another dumb puzzle, he gives us the note which just says, "James's phone." Then the homeless guy leaves and says we can find him in a subway later on, and boy howdy do we. Nicole finds James's phone under the floorboard, but no Nick. Why he just told Nicole about the phone instead of getting it himself, I'm not sure. Except for that Nick seems to be the most work-shy employee that has ever existed. Nicole then returns to the FBI office. The gold head is missing, which is weird, but Ruth claims it was sent out to be examined. So far, the only thing they found on the golden head is Nicole's own fingerprints, because she picked it up without the gloves I tried to pick up very early in the game. She decides that it's finally about time to follow protocol. Nicole wires up James's phone to power it up, because despite half the phone being missing, apparently the only issue is that the battery was too low. She sees a photo on the phone and sends it to her work computer. She CSI Miami enhances the image and sees that it is apparently Ha quiero. Ha quiero is the name Branford randomly spat out, so he presumably thinks he's the murderer. So, in a very Art of Murder 2-esque clairvoyant jump, Nicole goes to a random building near where James was doing his stakeout. After briefly becoming part of the pre-rendered background, Nicole takes a picture with our PDA for the first and only time in the game and distracts the thug inside the building. We find a hidden passage in the back of a closet and examine it. And by God, we have our murder weapon, and it's covered in blood. Knowing what I know now, which is the result of 2.5 playthroughs of this game, which is, equivalent to having 80 insight in Bloodborne, this revelation makes almost no sense to me, but we'll get back to that. Nicole then gets captured and actually pretty intensely roughed up. Nicole then essentially tricks them so she can buy herself some time. She does another horrible puzzle, in which the only enjoyable part is watching this ridiculous animation of Nicole falling over, and manages to escape back into the closet and smartly closes the door this time. Nicole escapes the building after getting more keys added to her inventory than a janitor at a gym,
I'd better take them all.
and also definitely kills the guard that assaulted her earlier. She walks around the corner to find the building that James was killed in and runs inside for no reason. Inside, someone veiled in shadows throws us some keys, which is probably Nick, but again, at this time you've never even seen him, and then just leaves saying nothing. Nicole goes to the bathroom that James died in and finds Hakiero tied up to a sink, beaten to shit. Nick apparently roughed him up for no reason, other than he is a cop and Hakiero has some melanin in him. Nicole gets a scan of the DNA on the knife and concludes that it matches the victim's DNA as well. Nicole talks to Chaser. Chaser? I barely know her. And he informs her that Hakiero tried to escape prison and was gunned down. Everyone is happy that the guy who was definitely killing people is now a corpse so we can all relax. Also, Ruth says shitheads again, which is not doing it for me. It's like seeing my sweet, tenderly old grandmother telling someone to fuck off. Nicole also combines the gold head with the gold body, which causes the gold head to open and reveal some heroin. Apparently the Incans hadn't moved on to fentanyl before their collapse. She looks at the picture of Hakiero again and realizes the picture was taken in a museum basement. She finally, after like 3 attempts, takes this key from James's belongings and finds even more heroin at the museum. Not only does she find some more heroin there, but a new body has shown up? But wait, Hakiero should be dead. So she runs over to the next murder site. The victim is a homeless man, coincidentally the one we just saw recently, Joel Tatum, and he's left dead in the subway, murdered in the same way as the other victims. This doesn't match the previous victims, though, who have all been people who were well off. We, for reasons I cannot possibly begin to understand, find a random bottle covered in bugs that contains Joel Tatum's college diploma. We're going to disregard why that may have been there, or even how it got there, as the bars that cover it up are rusted so shut we need Coca-Cola to unrust them, which is, probably not how that works, and return to Ruth to have the random secretary at her office figure out the connection between the murders for us. Ruth figures out that they all went to the same college. How this wasn't discovered earlier, I don't know. We head over to a library to find the yearbook for the college. We have to deal with the librarian, who I've come to call the Osama bin Laden of this game. This entire library section is almost entirely going from room to room, backtracking constantly with almost no puzzles. We find the yearbook, realize the critical page we need has been torn out, get the microfilm, and examine it in the microfilm reader. This reveals the following. 1. All the victims went on the same expedition to South America to visit some place called Akakor, which isn't a real place, but apparently some German dude once lied and claimed to have been from there. They went there as part of their archaeology club, and along with all of the victims, Warren, the museum director, and Alan Branford went with them. 2. The expedition ended with Professor Dickinson's missing, Dickinson's daughter, Alice Dickinson, missing, and some other student named Noel Roche's dead. Noel was confirmed dead when they found his body. The remaining expedition members survived. 3. Hakiero, the guy who was just killed trying to escape prison, also returned with them from the expedition for some reason. We then return to Warren to confront him with the very obvious question of, not only does all the evidence I brought earlier directly implicate you, but now we have our only true suspect dead and proof that you are definitely either being targeted or are the killer. Warren gives a very bizarre speech about how Nicole is a pussy that is worried about how she can't save everyone. Warren tells us there's actually a third guy who's still alive, Juan Alvarado. He joined the expedition in Peru. Hakiero also is mentioned, and that he was a grave robber that helped them escape. We go outside and find Branford out there. Branford tells us he hasn't spoken to Alvarado recently, and within 30 seconds then says that he actually did hear from Alvarado because he was just in New York City, who was apparently frightened that Alvarado was trying to track him down, even though he'd have no reason to be afraid since he wasn't even a suspect at this point. He told Branford he's returning home to Peru. He gave Branford his address in Peru. Nicole then claims that Hakiero was blackmailing Warren. I suspect this dialogue was killed during translation as the following happens. He claims he wasn't being blackmailed. Nicole gently pushes him on it. He admits that he was being blackmailed because he stole things from Akakor and smuggled them out. Nicole asks him if he muled drugs using museum artifacts. Warren says no, and then we present evidence that the head of the totem found at the murder site that matches the museum body contained drugs. He says, oh yeah, he ruins everything he touches. He also admits to smuggling Spanish coins, as in the Spanish coins we keep finding inside all the victims' bodies. Nicole then asks if they ever muled drugs using museum artifacts, again, for some reason, and this time he denies it. He then says he actually knew everyone being murdered was part of the trip, but he told Chaser. We then ask if he wants protection. He says, no, this place is swarming with police. So, does he already have protection then? This scene sets up something I'll get into later, but even more so than Art of Murder 2, the translation in this game is another level of confusing. Confusing in a way that is actually pretty frustrating to me, because at no point in Art of Murder 2 is there anything at this level of complexity in terms of the murder or the suspects. At this point there's 3 possible murderers, and trying to coordinate their stories is hard enough without also having to go through the Polish to English translator. We call Ruth and tell her we need a flight to Peru, so organize one for us. For some ridiculous reason, we invite Nick along again, thinking for some reason he'll actually do something this time. And again, I struggle to understand why we're even flying to Peru at this point. If our main suspect is in Peru, why would we fly out to see him? Wouldn't we just monitor immigration to see if he comes back in? And we still have Branford and Warren, both of whom could be the killer. And furthermore, it seems extremely bizarre to me that neither Branford or Warren are asking for any sort of police protection. We go into the FBI office again to get the tickets, where the chief rightfully refuses to let her go, since it's so out of her jurisdiction that even the CIA would tell her to cool it. Ruth doesn't even pretend to give a shit, and gives Nicole the tickets anyway, and next thing you know, she's in a new cute outfit in South America. There's an extremely long back and forth puzzle, again, which I swear takes up to nearly an hour, and Nicole is finally able to convince a local to organize a meeting with Alvarado. I only mention this next scene, not because it's integral to the story, but because it might explain something, and I'm hoping someone smarter than me will watch this video and figure it out. Nicole goes up to Alvarado's house, and a man labeled simply Incan is sitting outside the house. Nicole has to move him to show Alvarado her FBI badge. It's a dumb puzzle, don't worry about it. So she gives him a bunch of random herbs, and he leaves. Nicole is let in, and we get the full story from Alvarado, and boy is it a doozy. Alvarado and a bunch of the people went on an expedition led by Professor Dickinson. This is the expedition that Alan and Warren were on. They were harassed by, quote, Indians, which I'm going to guess were not actual Indians, nor were they Native Americans, but whatever. I'm assuming it was mistranslated from natives or Incans. They found a ton of treasure, far more than Warren let on earlier. The professor actually refuses to take the treasure since it's technically the Indians, but Warren really wanted to. Warren then creates a scheme to essentially abandon the professor in Akakor, stealing all the weapons. Why this Scooby Gang had weapons, I don't fucking understand, but Warren then tells everyone on the expedition to either stay with Professor Dickinson or leave with him. The professor and his daughter, Alice Dickinson, are forced to stay by Warren. Noel Roche stays behind because he has the hots for Alice Dickinson. The only other person who stays is Alan Branford. Branford, however, only stays for like 15 minutes before bouncing and rejoining the main group. Warren then pulls a Moses in the Old Testament and wanders around blindly in the woods for 2 weeks, and then ends up stumbling on their original campsite, where they find Professor Dickinson and Allison Dickinson missing, and the body of Noel Roche with his chest cut open and his heart taken out. He was identified by a watch he wore, which Alvarado describes as a, quote, bracelet type thing, so we at least know it's not one of those, like, stereotypical rapper clocks that they use as a necklace. Warren then says the best way to honor the professor is to steal the artifacts he explicitly said not to steal. And that's not me making a joke, he actually says that would be the best way to honor the professor. Finally, Hakiro helps them escape and smuggles out the artifacts. And for some reason, Warren buys everyone life insurance, which I found, a little suspicious. Alvarado then asks Nicole if she saw the Incan outside. Nicole for some reason lies and says no, she didn't see him. Alvarado says the Incan recently bought something that Alvarado owned. This is a very bizarre dialogue, and I'm not sure if this ties into the ending, but something to consider. Alvarado tells Nicole he Google Earthed it and knows how to get to Akakor now. That's why he went to New York, to try to convince the rest of the gang to come along with. Nicole, almost winking to the camera, says, "Oh, why don't you take me there tomorrow?" Knowing damn well this guy's going to have his lungs dangling out of his nostrils by tomorrow morning. Nicole comes back the next day, and hey, oh presto, he's dead. Nicole herself even says this line,
Uh-oh, the doors are open. No prizes for guessing why.
Like even she knew it was a bad idea not to protect the guy. And also her line delivery when seeing his actual body is pretty good stuff.
I can't. No, I'm feeling faint. Get me out of here. Nikki, pull yourself together. You can't help him anymore.
Nicole then takes 4 random crystals from Alvarado's mantelpiece and the Google Earth printout of the pathway to Akakor, when suddenly she hears people knocking on the front door. It's the Incan and the police officer from earlier. For some reason, Nicole decides she needs to flee, instead of calmly explaining to the police what actually happened and proving who she is. We do this jar puzzle to escape, all the while the police are on the first floor, probably watching me fuck around with different sized pots, and escape back to the hotel. We steal the camera the hotel owner gave us earlier, and get our rental car. I didn't discuss this rental car situation, but that's because it's simultaneously completely unimportant and one of the longest points of the game. We trade the camera for fuel for the car and then drive over to Akakor. Now, the drive to Akakor left me nearly in hysterics. If you remember, Art of Murder 2 showed us how Nicole drove in Cuba, which was like watching a 9-year-old 15 pixie sticks deep trying to pull off a drift they saw in Need for Speed Underground 2. Here though, when she drives as recklessly as she does, she actually suffers some sort of penalty for her actions. Nicole suddenly loses control of the car and it flies off a cliff. Somehow when she crashes, she's actually above the car, as though she flew out of the car onto a different platform and landed safely. This post-crash scene is a perfect example of everything I love these games for, and a perfect example of why these games are probably objectively bad. So, Nicole instant transmissions mid-car crash onto a cliff above the car that she just crashed, and looks down on it, and then cuts to Nicole in the game scene and she says, "It's so beautiful here, I'm glad I came." Not a shred of worry, not a holy shit, just, wow, the horizon is beautiful. She then stumbles one screen over and finds another wrecked car, basically one-to-one the car she was just driving. So did she climb down? Was the cutscene wrong? Then she examines the car and says, "This Jeep has been here for about 20 years now. So is this just a separate car that also crashed?" The people on the expedition did not say they crashed a Jeep, and the Jeep itself wouldn't have had space for the whole expedition. She then looks at the seat in the car and remarks, "This seat would hurt my back." Then, when she has it in her inventory, she says, "This seat looks comfortable," without a hint of sarcasm in her voice. She then gets a crowbar and calls it 3 different things depending on the situation she's in. The crowbar is actually a piece of Jeep frame, which makes me wonder why the frame on the Jeep was across the rope bridge that falls apart when we use it in the first place. Just multiple levels of confusion layered on top of each other. When I play scenes like this, I get into a slack-jawed, narrow-eyed, flabbergasted state where I can do nothing but laugh. After all that, she breaks a bridge and does a pulley operation across the cliffs that makes me tense up so hard my testicles fly up into my throat, and she wanders upon Akakor. Akakor is about 4 buildings, and she fucking sinking city detective mode flashbacks to when the professor and Warren were arguing about treasures. The professor says that they shouldn't just steal priceless artifacts from an uncontacted civilization, to which Warren replies that Professor Dickinson is a big pussy, and then starts scheming to leave him to die in the jungle. Nicole also turns a corner and finds an entire airplane, fully functioning, hanging out in Akakor. None the worse for wear, although there is a snake in the battery compartment, and hey, this snake is one of the screenshots from Art of Murder Hunt for the Puppeteer. I even referenced that in my Steam review of the second game. Finally some closure. Nicole finds Rachet's body, which she immediately says can't possibly be Rachet because he has too many fillings. I have a shit ton of fillings too, but that's mostly because I have the same level of self-control as a rat seeing a slice of pizza, but just to be safe, she yanks the lower jaw off the skeleton and carries it around in her pocket. The body is also wearing a watch, which someone mentioned only Rachet's has, but later on Nicole finds a note saying that Rachet's and the professor swapped watches. Nicole steals the plane, which I promise we will get to later, and flies to an airport for a commercial flight to New York. When she arrives, she speaks to Chaser.
"How are you and Nick working out?"
Working out? I haven't even fucking met that guy. He suspends us from active duty and informs us that for some reason Nick is a suspect. Nicole is kicked off the force, but goes to the library anyway for some reason. There, the librarian tells us that the person who tore out the page earlier, the yearbook photo with the members of the expedition, come on, keep up, was actually a member of the FBI. She also says that Warren has all the notes from the professor. Nick messages Nicole and tells her to check out the stockbroker's house again and mentions the photographs in the house. She finds a note behind a photograph of the stockbroker's house, signed by Noel Rachet's with a picture of himself. Again, how Nick or Nicole managed to figure this out is beyond me, but by Christ I want this plot summary to be over with, so let's just roll with it. Nicole then goes to the museum to speak to Warren, but manages to save some time to rummage through some of Warren's files and confirm that the jawbone is definitely not Rachet's. The jawbone belongs to the professor. Why did the professor supply teeth x-rays in his notes? I have no idea. Nicole goes outside and finds Warren, where she basically calls him an asshole for double-crossing the professor, and tells him that Noel Rachet's is actually not the one who died, it was Professor Dickinson. Warren suggests that Rachet is actually doing all the murders, and then drives off. Nicole follows him to the apartment building from earlier. The one where we found the dead bum in the subway? The one that says Bang Bank above it? We all remember Bang Bank, right? Unlike Art of Murder 2, I feel I can confidently say this is where a spoiler warning should be placed, because there is actually a mystery here. Granted, I really do not recommend playing it for yourself, but if you would like, you can jump to this time to skip the spoilers. But you'd also skip my lovely voice, and I would know it. And listen, buddy, I'm currently reviewing an adventure game from 2006 for a YouTube channel with 30 subscribers. I am already so far on the edge, anything could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. You want that on your conscience? Killing a man you don't know or care about who consistently has bad opinions? Now let's get back to it. Chaser calls Nicole and asks her where the report she promised is. Nicole tells him that she's actually still following Warren, and Chaser gets very mad and tells her to come back to the office immediately, which she does. When she gets back to the office, she notices there's a note from Chaser whose signature looks suspiciously like Noel Roche's. Yes, can you believe it? Leon Chaser was Noel Roche's. Not only is he a murderer, but he didn't even mix up the letters for the first and last name. He couldn't do Sean Launcher, not to be confused with Sean Lawn Chair, or maybe just a completely different name that doesn't use the same letters as your real name? Nicole opens his safe with his old name and finds newspapers about the expedition, evidence linking him to the murders, and tickets to Peru. Fucking hell, good thing Chaser sprung for business class instead of coach. That'd be an awkward conversation on the plane. Nicole decides to rush back over to the apartment building to save Warren, but not before calling Nick to leave another angry message on his answering machine. After doing some puzzles, Nicole boards an abandoned train and gets it moving, only for it to stop at another station and find Warren tied up with Chaser/Roche holding him at gunpoint. Chaser is very upset about his girlfriend being killed by Indians, which definitely were not Indians, moving on, and is going to kill Warren. Chaser says a very weird line that I cannot really understand. He says that Hakihiro actually started the killings, and then once Hakihiro had died, Chaser decided to take up the mantle. But Hakihiro would have no reason to kill these people, so I'm not sure this is just like a translation thing. Nicole bungles everything and essentially allows Warren to be killed, and right before Roche's turns the gun on Nicole, Nick comes in and saves the day. I mean, not really, since nearly everyone the serial killer wanted to kill is already dead, but hey, at least the serial killer is also dead. Also, I say comes in, but we really only get a good look at him for about 2 seconds, and even that is dark and hard to see. Nick remarks, off camera of course, on the fact that he's glad it's over, but finds it strange that Alan Branford, Warren's friend, was never targeted. The camera pans out from the street with the apartment to show Alan Branford smoking a cigarette near the murder site, leaving me and the dozen other Art of Murder fans with a raging mystery erection that will need medical intervention to get rid of. Once again, I understand that saying the story has problems is like saying that a burning house is having some water issues, but nobody else talks about these games, and I pray that someone smarter and probably more handsome than me can figure out what I could not. But dear God, where do I even start? Number 1, and this isn't exactly a plot hole, but what is the deal with Nick never being around? I would think this is a joke if he didn't actually show up at the end or when he beat the Hakihiro guy to shit. How does this man even have a job? And every time he does show himself, he's fucking something up, whether it be beating someone half to death or failing to stop a murder. He's awful. I just find it weird when the only thing I knew about him was that he teleported to Spain that one time in Art of Murder 2 to save Nicole, where he's seen in full and is just some random guy. And without wanting to spoil my inevitable Art of Murder 3 video, the game starts with Nick having resigned and is not in the remainder of the game. I thought maybe there'd be a reason why he could smell Nicole's "I'm in danger" pheromone from across the Atlantic Ocean and come save her, but the first game does not answer that. Number 2, and I'm not sure this even belongs in this section either, but I think it does deserve mention, the translation. I don't know what the translation effort was on this, but man, it is a bloodbath. Lines that make no sense, even more so than Art of Murder 2, destroy what I would actually consider a much more compelling story than Hunt for the Pumpeteer. There were moments in the game I had to essentially say, okay, I think they meant this, which would mean this. For example, earlier I mentioned that Chaser said Hakihiro started the killings and that he wanted to continue them. I have no idea this is actually what was written in the original language, because the way it is said is so bizarre and so unclear, it may have been something else entirely. There are tons of issues like this, but that one specifically stands out because when I read it, I loudly said, wait, what? Finally, the whole Alan Branford thing. I feel like at this point, I am probably the person most qualified to have a theory on why Alan Branford is alive at the end. I played this game 2.5 times, I took notes for both playthroughs, I watched everything closely and thought outside the box, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. Here are my theories on why Alan Branford was left alive, also titled How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Slop. 1. He was working with Roche's. I think this is the least likely, as from what I've seen there's almost zero evidence for this, and not only that, but Alan has an actual definitive alibi with Warren during one of the first murders. Interestingly though, that murder was of James, Nick's former partner who was investigating Hakihiro. The only other clue is that the stockbroker had Alan Branford's business card in his house, but even this seems circumstantial since anybody could have placed that there. So this is possible, but I think unlikely. 2. He was actually going to be murdered, and it was just last on the chopping block. I think this is more likely than 1, since somebody had to be the last murderer and Alan shows up near the last murder site. It's possible that Roche's called him to meet him there so he could do a double whammy. 3. He and Roche's were actually still friends, and Roche's had less hard feelings towards him. I say this because when you speak to Alvarado in Peru, he mentions that Alan actually stayed behind with Roche and the professor for a bit, before ultimately changing his mind and returning to the main group with Warren. Maybe because of this he hated Alan less than the others. This is my current running theory, besides the next one, which I'm about to give you, just because it's the one I actually have some fucking evidence for. The other ones basically have nothing except me randomly throwing out some ideas I had while playing through it again. And finally, the most likely. There isn't a reason. They poorly wrote the ending and wanted a cliffhanger, so they just threw something to make some dumbass 29-year-old 20 years later write 800 words on their poorly written game instead of going outside or learning a new hobby. I think this is the most likely, though the hardest for me to accept. Mostly because it would hurt me too badly to admit I've put in such effort into debunking a completely random story beat that is actually just a hook to try to get you to come back for Art of Murder 2. I've seen a couple GameFAQ posts about this, none of which have answers. I've posted my own and have yet to receive an answer. To be fair, I did actually contact the original writer of the game, Łukasz Pisarek, on LinkedIn. He only speaks Polish, but I know my way around Google Translate, so with a little help from that, I sent him a message. I almost immediately regretted doing this, and I wish I could delete it, but it's okay because he never responded. So worry not, if I ever get an answer to what this twist was supposed to mean, I will make a follow-up video. I also saw an Adventure Gamers forum post about this, but only 3 days later, the Great Adventure Gamers forum purge occurred. What is Łukasz trying to hide? And look, I know this is dumb, but when I play something like this with an ambiguous ending that isn't explained, I want to know what happened. For example, I love Darkseid 2, because it's bad, obviously, and the ending is very opaque. But if you look it up, very few people take the ending seriously or give any actual theories on what happened. So I just felt the need to explore, in case any fellow Nicolophiles wanted to see what another insane person thinks about a game from the 2000s. Oh boy, here we go again. Old David is going to try to review the gameplay of a point-and-click adventure game. Maybe next time he can review the sex scenes from God's Not Dead 4. We didn't fully understand Nietzsche. What fucking gameplay can I review? You click on the things and then Nicole does something. I do have a lot to complain about though. You'll remember in my last review, I said if you double-click on a scene transition, Nicole runs there for a second and then the game fades to black and then fades back in on the scene. It was nice because in that game you were going back and forth a lot. Well, Art of Murder 1 has even more of those back and forth puzzles, and there ain't no double-click fast travel this time, so enjoy walking back and forth and back and forth. You'll see Nicole's cheeks slapping together whenever you close your eyes after playing this game. Also, you know me, I'm in this game for nonsensical dialogue. I like to examine everything I can in a scene, but in this game the Reveal All Hotspots button won't highlight things that are purely flavor text, which was hard for me to swallow. I loved clicking on something completely random and thinking about the conveyor belt of human suffering that went into writing it, translating it, voice acting it, and putting all that info into the game, only for Nicole to say some dumb shit like a turgid reminder of humanhood. Another thing that was pissing me off a lot during this game, and it's really the first time I've seen this in one of these shitty adventure games, is that if you double click to speak someone or click an item to solve a puzzle, Nicole won't run to it. The game registers the first click as, oh, he wants to walk over to this puzzle as slow as possible, and ignores any other clicks after that. So I enter a huge area, immediately click on someone to speak to them or click an item on something, and then I have to sit for what feels like an eternity watching Nicole strut over to the puzzle in question. Oh, and another thing. Sometimes if you combine items it won't work, but then if you reverse the order you combine them in, combine A with B instead of B with A, it will work. Alright, that's enough. Even with those things, as frustrating and stupid as they were, it left me giggling with how silly it is. Let's get into the good stuff. The puzzles. First, let's talk about the puzzles I actually liked. Oh, when I was writing the script, I wrote that here are the puzzles I like part, before I looked at my notes and realized there aren't any puzzles that I like at all. I guess this one puzzle where you move a truck to climb onto it is inoffensive. One thing that shocked me about this game is that there aren't many puzzles like the classic battery plus cigar tin plus lighter plus bricks in Art of Murder 2. The only two really egregious ones that made me think, oh, I never would have figured that out, were the ones where you have to get a diploma by pouring coke on rusted screws on a sewer gate, removing the grate, covering a newspaper in oil and lighting it on fire, and then finding a bottle with a diploma in it, which you then use a stick to extract. I mean, when you say it all out like that, it seems obvious. The diploma we get from this is also an item I don't think we should really need. It's just to prove the recent murderer was also an educated man. Don't we have an FBI database that could figure that out? The other puzzle that pissed me off was this one where you cover a bowl in aluminum foil to redirect a light to a temperature sensor in the museum. Despite the obvious this is a dumb puzzle factor, the main reason I got so pissed off with this puzzle was because of the biggest issue I want to bring up with the gameplay, Nicole's extreme reluctance to pick up things. Look, I get why the game doesn't let me pick up everything all at once. No, logically it doesn't make sense for Nicole to pick up a random pair of pliers she finds on the ground until she has a reason to do so, but it clashes when Nicole ignores a tool found on the floor of a murder scene, but then does the corkscrews oil diploma puzzle literally in the same room. It's like doing a jigsaw puzzle, but every 15 minutes you realize you're missing a piece and you need to go find it before you can continue. So when I try to pick up the bowl and tinfoil and Nicole refuses, but then 3 scenes later will pick them up, it's just frustrating. I'd rather just have all the pieces at my disposal to solve it, rather than running back and forth trying to see if an item I tried to pick up is now pick-upable. And that's not even mentioning the items that actually make sense for Nicole to pick up. Okay, you don't want to carry a roll of tinfoil, whatever, but surely evidence bags, fingerprint kits, and luminol is something that a detective should have on them. What's even more bizarre to me is the fact that each item has its own "I don't know what to do with it" pickup text. Even when it's 5 items in the same room, each one has its own special recording.
Frankly, I've no idea what to do with it. Frankly, I've no idea what to do with it. Frankly, I've no idea what to do with it.
She doesn't want to pick up a key from the evidence from James' murder until she actually needs it for a door later on. And when I say she actually needs it, she doesn't know that she needs it. The game just decides that you need it, so you better grab it before you go. The only saving grace of this is that dead ends are essentially impossible with a system like this, but lots of other games prevent dead ends and also let you grab things prematurely. But besides that, the vast majority of these puzzles are walk back and forth talking to people. The librarian is extremely frustrating, and I'm aware that that's probably intentional, but by Christ, having to walk back to her and walk to the next thing over and over again kills me. Peru is nightmarishly bad because walking back and forth across these massive screens takes forever, and since there's no double click to fast travel, you have to watch Nicole's skinny
dead ass
walking back and forth talking to the 2 least interesting men in Peru. Oh, and sometimes you have to talk to a person more than once for the next trigger to occur. So then you walk all the way back to the other guy, and you realize you need to hear something else from the first guy. So the gameplay is definitely worse than the second one, which obviously isn't a surprise. It's like saying that people 40 years ago died from preventable diseases more often than now, but honestly the thing that killed me the most was the no fast travel double click. I know this may come as a surprise since I'm 8,000 words into a review for a game nobody knows or cares about, for a YouTube channel that has even fewer people knowing or caring about it, but as I'm getting older, I gotta value my time better, and spending more than half of my time with a game just transitioning from screen to screen makes me feel more negative about the gameplay than I did on the second one. I just recently played Siberia, which is good, and I do like it, but having the slow animations and no double-click fast travel makes me hesitant to finish it. I'm still trying to get through it though, but ironically, the fact that it's not bad is hurting it. How can I play this? Where is the funny and badly translated dialogue? Also, this is totally random, but I spent so much time trying to get this game installed on a virtual machine in the hopes that it had a fun install screen. You know what I'm talking about, like a screen with half of Nicole's face taking up one half of the screen, Ruth taking up the other half, special sound effects when you click certain things. To be fair, maybe this was a silly thing to expect in a game about a serial murderer and people who say shit at the frequency that I do, but I was recently playing the Oregon Trail 2, and when you start that up you get a funny rope snap opening and all the buttons make weird noises. But I spent so much time, so much wasted and misguided time trying to get this thing installed, I feel obligated to at least mention this. I bought a physical copy, no doubt completely surprising the eBay seller when he got the order, then I had to rip the DVD to an ISO, which I haven't done in ages. Then I had to load it as an ISO on the virtual machine's drive, once Windows was installed of course, and what was I greeted with? The same image as the box, a basic install screen, and a big fat can't find a display device. And while I was already far into the sunk cost fallacy, I wasn't far enough to decide to figure out how to get this graphics thing worked out. So here you go, its installer sucks too. Oh, and strangely enough, the box art kind of gives away the mystery if you think about it. This also means I have all 3 Art of Murder games, we don't count the 4th or the 5th one, which I think means I gain the Mandate of Heaven and ascend to the throne of Lukasz Pisarok. In my new position, I would like to declare Nicole is actually pansexual, Nick is a figment of Nicole's imagination, Ruth's new name is Nagito Hinata, and I will also delete Wang, the racist stereotype of a Chinese person from Art of Murder 3. Turns out Polish people can be racist too. Thank you for your attention on this matter. Finally, I wanted to talk about the engine the game runs in, the Wintermute engine. Now, I like to think I'm pretty knowledgeable on my game engines. I know some minor ones like Unity, Unreal, CryEngine, and I know the obvious best ones like Scratch and RPG Maker for the PlayStation 1, but I have never heard of this Wintermute engine. And a quick look on their webpage intrigued me because the engine seemed to produce 100% my type of shit constantly. And after looking at the list of games made in it, I noticed a few I was even planning on playing. One interesting thing to note is that apparently the smash hit game Lindo of the Lost, which you may know from millions of videos showing as a plagiaristic, horrifying piece of shit that it is not on the list. How strange. I can't imagine why. I mean, just look at this face. Forget all that gameplay nonsense I just talked about, because now we're going to get into the good stuff. The beautiful graphics, the dazzling sound, the amazing voice acting. One thing I want to mention up front is that I generally find this game darker than 2. Yes, the people all talk funny and everyone except Nicole still looks like victims in the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, but the themes and the way everyone speaks is much darker. I don't really like this. Sure, it seemed weird when Nicole would look at a corpse and say something about her skin aching or some other nonsensical bullshit, but I would prefer it to someone explaining how a person's heart was removed and replaced with fecal matter or whatever. Just something to keep in mind here, not that Art of Murder 2 was a bunch of pie throwing and giggles, obviously. As usual with any City Interactive game, the thing that drew me into it in the first place was these beautiful pre-rendered backgrounds. While I may have gotten marginally better at 3D modeling in the past couple months, I can't even imagine trying to model one of these backgrounds. And look, I know it's probably a lot of copy pasting and probably asset sharing, but even with that, just the layouts of the room give me the shivers in a good way. It gives me a weird sense of nostalgia for a place I've never been to. An example I really like is the FBI building at night. Even during the day, the entire FBI building is essentially abandoned, in downtown New York no less. But going to this abandoned office at night, hearing people complain about the fact they're still in the office, it brings me back. I used to have to do overnight shifts as a janitor, and the vibe alone, ooh, it's a sense of loneliness, feeling kinda cool since you're there when no one else can be, and mild exhaustion from the hours. As you may know, one of the things I love about these games is when you're in someone's house and you get to root around their stuff and see what they have. There's unfortunately less of that here, but we still got a little bit. I love the stockbroker's house, I like looking at Nicole's desk, there's an abandoned apartment, and I like looking in Alvarado's house as well. Listen, there's only so much I can say about these renders. If you get it, you get it. If you don't get it, I don't get you. Just look at this museum at nighttime. And this background really... we should get out of here. Unfortunately, there's no item zoom in here, so I can't steal someone's butt plug and then examine it closely. I just have to deal with this tiny inventory image, but even those are cute. Tragically though, a lot of lines in this game either don't have a voice line attached, or in some cases you examine an item and a dialogue pops up at the bottom just saying the item's name. As a lover of horrid dialogue, this is a true tragedy for me. What's weirder is that some items don't have even the bare minimum of written text. I grab these herbs and Nicole doesn't even say anything. The Nicole I love would have said some dumb shit like, "This potent flower could even knock out an elephant." As for the character models, Nicole still has her Habsburg jaw, and her ass has been squeezed into jeans 3 times smaller than her size. Nicole only has 2 outfits in this one, but the second one makes her look like a snack, so I approve. Unfortunately, so do all the men in Peru, who also let her know about their insatiable Nicole lusts. All the other NPCs look terrible though, and pixelated for some reason. I think this might be a limitation of the engine. I noticed that when there's another NPC on the screen, the game seems to run substantially worse. When Ruth is on the screen, it runs really badly, probably because of having to render her rotund body, and this cop seems to make it run worse too. Also, don't worry about this guy. I can vouch for him. Him and I go way back. Okay, he just does that sometimes. But going to these games to look at the character models is like going to a strip club to look at the poles. I recently went on a trip to Norway, and my diseased, twisted mind at one point thought, wow, this looks like it could be an Art of Murder background. Something about the Art of Murder backgrounds just sparks so much joy in me, I can't describe it. I played Chronicles of Mystery, which is another City Interactive game, and it had a scene in Venice, and it was just gorgeous. And I've been to Venice myself, which, let me tell you, is more fecal matter than water, and I actually thought this looks better in Chronicles of Mystery. Why do I think that? Because of my worsening mental state, yes, but more because of how much effort was put into these backgrounds. The only real complaints I have is that the environments could be more varied. Maybe I'm spoiled by Hunt for the Puppeteer and Chronicles of Mystery, but I wish we went to more visually distinct places. I feel like a lot of backgrounds here are just shitty building in New York. One thing I don't come into these games for is the music, and there's a good reason why, besides the fact I'm lyrically and rhythmically stunted. Now, Art of Murder 2 had some bangers, and there are 1 and 2 of this game that stand out as catchy, but for the most part they're just there. Not much standing out is great, but then again nothing standing out is bad either, which is more than I can say for any of the music I've ever created. This tune was somewhat nice.
What a dump.
But again, you could not pick a worse person to review music, except maybe Helen Keller, but at least she could probably feel the vibrations like Mozart or something. I can't even do that. And of course, the voice acting. The voice acting. And not only the voice acting, but the translation work. Now obviously, I have never had to translate a full script from one language to another, that is very true. However, it blows me away how bad the translation is. Surely if you can get it translated, you could have one more person who is fluent in English go over it and just rewrite certain lines so they make more sense. I'm not even asking for a full script rewrite, just does it make sense? Yes, move on. Does it not make sense? Rewrite the line so it does. And here's the one compliment anyone will ever give to Nicole's voice acting. I think she seemed more lively than she was in 2. She seems more eager, more outspoken, especially when talking to her boss about the case. In Art of Murder 2, she sounded like a lobotomy victim. In Art of Murder 1, she sounds like the manic person pre-lobotomy. But nevertheless, the voice acting was both terrible and entertaining the entire way through. From every man hitting on Nicole, to our heroine having to act surprised when Alvarado is murdered, to Chaser's constant yelling. She also, of course, says so many stupid things it's hard to keep up. Here are some good ones.
Message in a bottle.
Bienvenido.
I need a car. To rent? Irreplaceable equipment. This isn't Counter-Strike. I can't use weapons against local police. I can't leave even a trace of my presence, especially my skinny dead ass. It's beautiful here. I'm so glad I came. A crowbar. Must be 21 or over to drink here. I made a real ass of myself.
And you know, I reached a point playing in my notes where I said, if I write down every weird line and every stunted delivery, I will be transcribing this entire game's dialogue. So I just had to stop. I figured if I wanted to show any weird dialogue, I could play the video at any timestamp and I would find something. Also, there's precious few clinky clonky sounds like the ones I love in Art of Murder 2. You know, where you pick up an item and it goes like kerchunk or pew or ka-ting. I've started to notice that the way I describe these games is the same way a child describes one of those activity centers where you put the baby in the middle and they get to play with all the toys around them. And my complaining is like the baby whining that this older model of the activity center doesn't have a cow that goes moo. But you know what? That baby deserves the mooing cow, just like I deserve a good clonk when I solve a puzzle. So anyway, if they fix all these issues, it would be like a 10 out of 10 game for sure. You know, when I was playing this game for my 3rd time, I invited my poor wife to watch me. I told her it would be a great time because of how silly the dialogue is and how ridiculous the puzzles are. And guess what? She hated it. I asked another friend, you know what they said? They said it was awful and the game is clearly a disaster. They didn't even come over to try it. And I get why people would think that, but as I played this game more and more, I started to actually think about the effort that went into it. For all its flaws, for all its terrible voice acting, for all the times the game made me walk between 2 NPCs 4 times in a row, it was never rushed. The art is great, the scenes are well laid out, the dialogue is voice acted, there was clear effort here. And because of that, I don't think I can hate it like I used to. Maybe this is because I got my first negative review on my game I released on Steam. Apathy in Our Stars is on Steam and free, and I worked hard on it. Please check it out, and please leave a review, because every time that number goes up, I just get one more reason to wake up in the morning. But seeing someone play my game for 1 hour, which I spent 3 years developing, only for them to call it shit, gave me a new respect for the craft. It's like when you think something like woodworking can't be too hard, and then you spend 4 hours trying to make a box that isn't even fucking straight. You can hold one PlayStation controller and some crayons. You get a real sense of how much effort goes into something that is even bad. I guess my point is I just don't get the feeling that nobody cared about this game. There was love here, and I don't get the same feeling when I play something like Call of Duty Modern War Crimes 3, or a DLC for Stellaris, or a new Assassin's Creed game. My man Luke Hosh loved Nicole, and I get the vibe that the people involved were having fun making this. They didn't make Nicole burst into song 3 times because they were checked out of their jobs.
Driving that train high on cocaine. Casey Jones is ready. Do.
Granted, I did play it 3 times, and maybe I don't want to admit that it was actually a game that they just threw together for a quick buck, but I like to think that I'm one of the more qualified to speak on this company, having spent so much of my life on their games, and I just don't get that from this game. After a certain amount of time, City Interactive swapped to doing only hidden object games, and I think you can tell that they didn't give a shit. They didn't even voice act Nicole, for fuck's sake. What's even the point if I don't hear her saying dumb shit? So despite what the previous 11,000 words may make it seem like, I love these stupid games. It may be bad by every normal metric, but I can't stay mad at it. And every time I turn on one of these games, it's like the food critic in Ratatouille remembering his childhood. I'm transported to a time in my life when I didn't have another family member die every year, when I got my mom's hand-me-down laptop and played Myst on it, when life was simpler and you could get away without having a double-click fast travel. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have my 4th out of 5 breakdowns to have.
And don't get in any more trouble or the chief will string me up by the balls.